This is really not, in my view, two issues. You know, the struggle against French imperialism and world imperialism in solidarity with French imperialism, and this nauseating march that they had last Sunday, which the other conference is going to talk about. That's a struggle against imperialist war, but it's also a struggle against the police, and in that instance, the French police, the French state. Because just like we have our Fergusons and we have our black and brown ghettos here, you know, every major city and a lot of small cities in France are now ringed by ghettos. Ghettos of Arab, African, and Muslim communities where the social conditions are, you know, unimaginably deplorable. Worse than they are here. Poverty's worse there. You know, unemployment is high, especially among young people, just like here. The percentages of young people, especially black and brown people, in French prisons is about the same. And in addition to not having jobs, most of these young people, you know, have gone through the prison system, which messes you up in all sorts of ways. So it's very similar. So we should not be surprised, as has been the case in the past. There have been rebellions there. And they've been primarily young, African, and Arab. But nobody wanted to talk about that last Sunday. We'll talk about it later, you know. When we, in the People's Power Assembly, began talking about what we wanted to do during the Martin Luther King holidays, this was, you know, way back in, wasn't that long ago, but it seems like a long time ago. In early December, late November, when we were getting these grand juries letting off cops and people were outraged and they were taking the streets and the thousands and blocking bridges and highways and all sorts of things, which they're still doing, you know, even up to this day. You know, even taking over police stations in Ferguson, you know. And so we were thinking, wow, you know, what if we could organize some kind of strike, you know, whatever that means to people. Not a labor strike, but, you know, people leaving school or doing something that, you know, that equals no business as usual. As it turns out, you know, political circumstances, what happened with the 2 cops being shot, maybe the weather, this or that, you know. I'm being equivocal here because we still don't know where this movement is going. And, you know, recent demonstrations may not have been the biggest demonstrations, but it's too early to judge that, far too early. We were thinking of ambitious things. That's why we decided to call it a strike against racism. That didn't quite happen except in symbolic ways. But once we knew what we were dealing with and what probably would happen yesterday, those of the people who were organizing it, especially the new people, you know, and let me tell you, it was almost 95% new people who organized it. They said, we like the strike idea. So we are going to go on a 12-hour protest, you know. And some of us veterans were like, okay, I'm going for 6, you know, I'm going for whatever. But they actually organized borough-based committees that met in this office, and they had early morning activities, 8 a.m. in Brooklyn, in Staten Island, in the Bronx. Bronx was a little later. In Queens. I mean, by the time we began rallying at 1 p.m., which is kind of early for a weekday, no holiday like Monday, there had already been 6 or 7 actions, you know, and people began converging, you know, and the numbers were the numbers that you would expect that time of day. Actually, not bad, but not the numbers that you get, you know, later in the evening. But folks didn't want to change it to the evening. They said, we want to rally at 1, and when you get off work, you can come and join us at City Hall if we're still there. I mean, we went from the African burial ground, which is near Foley Square. From there, we did libations. Comrade Dolores did a great sort of quick educational on that whole struggle around that place. We went from there to Wall Street, meandering around, playing cat and mouse with the cops, and making them run, and then we went down to the Staten Island Ferry. And with Staten Island Ferry, what does that make you think of? Errol Garner, Staten Island Ferry. So we had a die in there. And then we got up, and then we walked all around River Street, all the way back up to the Manhattan Correctional Facility, the federal prison. That's right next to the courts, where they had our sister, Lynn Stewart, and so many other political prisoners. And we had a rally right outside of the prison in solidarity with the prisoners. And the prisoners, I guess they have like cigarette lighters, or I don't know, something they can make little flashes with, and they were flashing us. And it was heavy. It was very emotional. I mean, some of the people began crying. And it really made the people in the demonstration feel good, because we were able to share this with people who are incarcerated. There was that connection, Somebody even, one of the speakers there was a kid, couldn't have been older than 12, other moving presentations. And then finally we got to City Hall around probably a little late, somewhere between 4:30 and 5. And we stayed there and did that, and some people joined us. But that wasn't enough. Other people went from City Hall to Grand Central Station, where some of you know there have been protests almost on a daily basis. And quite a few busts, I understand. And by that time, the demonstration had swelled because people were getting off work. And there were hundreds of people there. And I think that maybe before it's too late and we have newer things, maybe there'll be some footage of that, because it was pretty good. I think we got some footage of it. Anyway, that was yesterday, 12 hours of protesting from 8 a.m. To 8 p.m. A couple of interesting things about yesterday and the context of yesterday. Apparently, the People's Power Assembly have become an issue in this struggle between the mayor and the PBA and the police. Unbeknownst to us, we found out on Wednesday when the press started calling the office. Have you heard about this? Do you have any response to the mayor's comments? What mayor's comments? And it turns out, how many people know about this? It turns out that de Blasio, in sort of a, I was going to say schizophrenic, but I don't know if that's the right way. For protesting, I'm with the police. Whatever. That kind of thing. Stop. Frisk. Frisk them. Arrest them. And one of his spinning head, machinations. He said, well. And most of the protesters are peaceful and good, and I agree with them. But there are a few that are very bad and say sickening stuff that I find reprehensible. And they asked him who, and he said, well, like the People's Power Assembly. And we were like, so those comrades who don't think that the People's Power Assembly is revolutionary enough, you should talk to the mayor, because I don't know where he got that from, but apparently, this is very common. It's a divide and conquer type of thing. I think it's almost like that. That Phil Oakes song, love me, I'm a liberal, but one day I'll be turning you in, It's almost like he got some, he flashed a light on us and said, you want to attack some people? Attack the PPA. Attack those folks, because they're vile and so forth and so on. There'll be more on this, because we're still discussing what our response to that is going to be. And actually, in a way, it puts us in a good position, because since he attacked us by name, City Hall has singled us out by name and attacked us. It gives us a somewhat elevated platform to respond to the mayor and say, okay, you want to have a discussion? Why haven't you fired Bratton, who is the architect of broken windows, which is just an excuse for gentrifying black and brown youth, and it's been copied in one way or another all over the country, which is why he should have never been made police commissioner. And why we're talking about that, why do we still have broken windows? And isn't it broken windows that was responsible for the murder of Eric Garner, for selling some Lucy's, if he was doing that, you know? So stay tuned very soon, whether it's a press conference or a protest. We'll be responding to the mayor, and we'll be asking all our friends and allies to come and join us. There were January 15th events in other cities. I want to single out Baltimore. They had a big event, hundreds and hundreds of people. But something really messed up happened there. One of the leaders of their demonstration against the police yesterday was picked up on a year-old warrant on a misdemeanor charge 3 hours before the rally was supposed to begin. A young African-American woman, a mother, 23 years old, Sarah Benjamin, just become politically involved. Actually, she was a fast food worker, and she's evolved from fast food to revolution, you know. And, it's like any other ghetto. You know, the police, they focus on you when you're political, and if they can't buy you off in some other ways, which they usually don't try, the quickest thing is repression, you know. So our comrades and friends spent most of today at press conferences and demonstrations in front of the prison where they have Sarah. And she's not out yet, but I understand that bail was set and bail was posted. And so, has somebody got an update on that? Is she out? She's supposed to be out tonight.
They said it would take 8 hours to process.
Right. So hopefully, you know, by the end of this meeting, or certainly by midnight, she should be out. You know, solidarity with our comrades in Baltimore. Free Sarah. And finally, we're still in the Martin Luther King commemoration days, which started yesterday and go to the 19th, which is the holiday. There are events tomorrow and Sunday. I'm not up on them, and if anyone is, maybe they could share that information. But there are two important events on Monday, the holiday. One is in Harlem, and that begins, I think, at noon, 110th and Lexington, Lenox, right. And there's another event that I think is, you know, being replicated in cities around the country. It's a 4-mile march. You know, that 4 means something. It has some meaning. 4 hours. The 4 hours that Mike Brown lied on the ground, right? You know, 4-mile march, and that starts, I think, at 2:12. 12? Is that 12 too?
No, 2 p.m. But I was hoping we'd engage people and they would come and support the PPA contingents at these 2 events. And the Union Square starts at 2, but I thought we'd meet here at 12. The Harlem starts at 12 noon. Imani's doing that. He couldn't be here. I don't know.
Okay.
We have to get a few placards and a few things.
Well, Kathy has got a sign-up thing here. Were you going to take people by hand now, or are you going to do it later?
I thought we were going to do it now, Monica.
Is that what we're going to do?
I thought of doing the discussion.
Okay.
All right, we'll do it during the discussion. But the point is, if you can go to either of these demonstrations, and the PPA wants to have a presence there, there are people who want to go, you know, please sign up, you know, take the weekend off and on Sunday, which is a holiday for some of you, I think. For comrades and friends of the party who haven't come to the PPA meetings, you know, if you can, every Wednesday, come. I mean, especially in the course of this uprising against police terror, these meetings have been huge. There's been no seats available. you know, and it's been primarily, actually it's been people of all generations, young people, black and brown people, a lot of women, activist whites, you know, people from all the boroughs. It's been exciting, dynamic meetings, and very democratic, where they're deciding and consenting on all these things, you know. And actually, we need some of you to come, because especially some of you who've been around for a while, we want you to influence some of these folks, because they are potential revolutionaries, if not already revolutionaries. And they've got such spirit and such energy, the kind that you need if you're going to demonstrate for 12 hours. Actually, the party is organizing a special class for some of the new PPA people who want to talk about the roots of the state, the role of police in society in a somewhat more political way, certainly a more leisurely way than we can do it at our Wednesday night meetings. And finally, and there'll be more on this to come, we are in the early stages, this is the PPA, of putting together a tribunal that will be held here in New York against police terror. It'll be a national tribunal. And we're lining up all of the basic things, you know, the friends and relatives of the victims, you know, judges and stuff like that, logistics, etc., objectives. And one of the objectives, an important objective, of course, is not only to put the police on trial and educate some people and bring them into the struggle, but also to unite the issue of the struggle against the police and the economic struggle, the class struggle for $15 an hour, for a job, for health care, for housing, for daycare, for all the things that people need economically and socially. Because I think that however this, you know, evolves, and we have no blueprint, there's going to be a juncture when those two struggles are joined. That always happens, and I think that juncture is on the horizon. Comrade Deirdre gave an excellent talk last week that dealt with this. The main reason why we're continuing the discussion, I mean, a lot of reasons, it's so big it needs to be continued, but the catalyst for definitely putting it on the agenda was this enormous, and in some ways, at least in recent history, unprecedented pro-bourgeois, pro-imperialist, pro-war demonstration in France. It's a huge phenomena. I can't even remember anything like it, even in the days following 9/11. Quite like it, although I'm sure there were many things when Bush went down there. But what's even more confusing and what's more insidious about it is that it took in the liberals and some people who may consider themselves progressive or left. They're either confused and pulled into it. You know, it was striking to me to see even the group Anonymous, yes, coming out and saying that they're going to hack Islamic sites. You know, this was a group that, you know, hacked into the Ferguson Police Department, you know, several months ago. And all of a sudden, you know, they're going to be with the police against the oppressed of the earth. I hope that was a mistake. I hope they reversed that. I don't know if anybody knows that. Actually, it might be helpful, it might be informative to know just what groups have taken what positions. Some people are confused and were just pulled into it under bullshit slogans. But there are a lot on the left, as a, you know, broad brush category. They know that this is bad, but they don't want to deal with it because it's hard, because people got killed in a liberal, messed up magazine, you know, in the middle of Paris, you know, and they wish it would go away. They're like, get this, go away, please, you know. And we wish it would go away too, but revolutionaries can't do that. This is the class struggle. This is the world struggle. We have to deal with it. And what it has done, temporarily, I mean, this was the case before it was done, but it has marginalized opposition to it. It has marginalized class-based, ideological-based, anti-imperialist-based opposition to imperialism. It's pushed it to the side. It almost seems like it doesn't exist. It does exist, but it's a faint echo. And this is a crisis for the working class. This is a crisis for the anti-imperialist movement. 10 years ago, or a little more than that, during the Gulf War that began in 2003, I mean, probably some of these same people, I imagine, were shutting down the capitals of Europe to say no to Bush's war in 2003. There were huge demonstrations, millions of people all over Europe. Remember the biggest demonstration in the world? I think it was February 15th or something like that, 2003. Probably some of this, there probably was a little bit of an overlap. There must be. It's about 10 years later. So it's a crisis. And what the party has to do, in addition to this wonderful analysis, is we have to put our heads together with our allies and figure out how to fight back. Some of it is analytical, but some of it will have to be action too. I've been thinking, and I can't be the only one who's been thinking. I'm not proposing this. I'm doing something very, dangerous, and that's thinking out loud. I've been thinking maybe we should organize, Muslims' lives matter. But I thought maybe that's not the right thing. But maybe it is. I don't know. It certainly would be better than nothing. But somehow, no matter how big or small it can be, some of that may be based on conditions and circumstances that we're not fully in control of. Somehow there has to be a mass answer to this at some point. And I think that the party cannot duck or hide from its responsibilities in that respect. Nor can people who take their politics serious. There's got to be a response. We cannot let it go down that we've all been silenced and that the imperialist narrative has won. What is their narrative? This is a clash of civilizations, and you know who wins that one. And because of the ideological weakness of the radical Islamists, they pretty much agree. And it seems like they're fighting for a return to the 12th century, even though, here's the big contradiction, they're fighting, especially in the absence of other voices in a vacuum, they're fighting on behalf of the oppressed. And we must take this very serious. Islam is considered, for many oppressed people, a revolutionary beacon, a light that they are rallying around. And who can blame them? Where are the communists? Where are the socialists? Where are the revolutionaries? Where are the workers? Where are the militants doing stuff? There's something that, I'm sorry for taking so long, but there's some, they taped the African guy who allegedly did this in the kosher supermarket. Somebody had a phone on, they taped him. Anybody hear that? Yeah. One of the things he said, he was having an argument, and one of the things he said, he says, why aren't you organizing demonstrations against the attack on Muslims? He said that. Why aren't you organizing? It's a good question. Because in the absence of mass mobilizations, this narrative, clash of civilizations, and individual acts of terrorism, this will define the world struggle. The only thing that can change that is a mobilization that is class-based and anti-imperialist. We have a lot of responsibility. Maybe we can't do it tomorrow. Maybe we can't even do it next month. Maybe the anti-police brutality struggle is part of it. I haven't thought about it a lot, but I can't help but think that to some extent, just like it's weakened everything temporarily, this development in Europe has weakened the anti-police struggle a little bit. It's had to have had it. Whether it's subliminal or subtle or semi-conscious, I don't know. Maybe it's none of that, hopefully. But this is a big blow against the movement. And we have to do something about it. Sure, we wish it would go away. And maybe there'll be something that will replace it, that will excite us and be easy and get everybody out in the street. Hallelujah, we want that. But what if that's not true? What if we just have to deal with this all of a sudden? This is the new post-9/11, post-Paris war on terror. And it could be.
Kathy?